My father looked me dead in the eyes and called me the stupidest mistake he ever made. He gave me exactly 60 minutes to pack 21 years of my life into 2 suitcases and get my pregnancy out of his sight. My mother? She just sat there, staring at her dinner plate as if the mashed potatoes held the secrets of the universe, choosing her comfort over her only daughter's survival. Fast forward 9 years. I'm standing in my home office overlooking my 6-acre estate in New Jersey when security calls. An elderly, broken looking couple is at my gate, begging for a moment of my time. They say they're my parents. For the first time in a decade, I smiled, not out of love, but because the mistake they threw away was about to decide if they were even worth a conversation. My name is Casey Miller, and this is how I built a kingdom from the wreckage of a shattered heart. Before we dive into the rest of this journey, please hit that subscribe button to join our community. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from right now, and what time is it there? I read every single comment, and your support means everything. Now let's get back to the night my world ended, and my life truly began. The air in our dining room that Sunday was heavy, the kind of stillness that precedes a hurricane. I remember the exact clink of silver against china, a sound that used to represent the perfect Miller family legacy. But the moment I whispered the words, "I'm pregnant," the symphony of my life came to a screeching halt. My father, Robert, didn't explode. He didn't scream. Not at first. He just set his fork down with a surgical precision that made my blood run cold. He looked at me, his eyes turning into 2 chips of gray ice. To Robert Miller, I wasn't a daughter. I was a project, a successor, a son in a dress. He had spent 21 years molding to take over the family construction empire. In one sentence, I had gone from being his greatest investment to his most embarrassing liability. "You are the stupidest mistake I ever made," he said, his voice a low, vibrating growl of disgust. He stood up, and the force of it sent his mahogany chair crashing against the hardwood floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silence of my mother's cowardice. He told me I had 60 minutes. 60 minutes to erase 21 years. I looked at my mother, Susan, pleading with my eyes for just one word of defense. She just stared at her dinner, mesmerized by her own silence, choosing her silk curtains and country club membership over her own flesh and blood. I packed my life into 2 battered suitcases with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. As I dragged them down the stairs, the sound of the evening news was blaring from the living room. They had already replaced me with background noise. I drove straight to Brandon's apartment, my heart clinging to the flickering hope that he would be my harbor. Brandon was the man who had promised me a white picket fence future, the man who called our baby a blessing just a week prior. But when I pounded on his door, sobbing and homeless, a woman answered. Her name was Ashley. She was wearing a silk robe and a 2-carat engagement ring that caught the hallway light like a jagged blade. Brandon appeared behind her, and the Prince Charming mask didn't just slip, it shattered. He didn't offer a hand. He offered a cold, clinical glare. He told me I was a complication he didn't sign up for. He had been engaged to Ashley for 2 years. I was just a side project, a secret he was now finished with. He looked me in the eye and told me to handle the problem before closing the door. I sat in my car in that dark parking lot, 21 years old, homeless, penniless, and carrying a life that the whole world seemed to despise. My phone buzzed, a text from my father. He hadn't just kicked me out. He had notified the entire extended family that I was dead to him and warned them that anyone who helped me would be cut off. In less than 3 hours, I had lost my home, my family, and the man I thought loved me. I was standing on the edge of a cliff with nothing but $847 in my savings and a fierce, burning heat starting to grow in my chest. They thought they had thrown me away. They didn't realize they had just lit the match. Rock bottom isn't a place, it's a feeling. It's the smell of mildew in a 60-a-week boarding house in Newark, and the sound of your own stomach growling while you count pennies for a gallon of milk. After Robert and Brandon closed their doors, the world turned gray. I was 21, 6 months pregnant, and working 3 jobs that would have broken a seasoned athlete. My days started at 4 a.m. at a local bakery, my hands buried in cold dough while the rest of the world slept. By noon, I was at a dry cleaner, pressing steam into suits that cost more than my monthly rent. From 6 p.m. until midnight, I was a voice on a headset at a windowless call center, taking insults from strangers for minimum wage. I wasn't living, I was vibrating with sheer exhaustion. Then came the day the lights almost went out. I was mid-call at the center when the room started to spin. The hum of the fluorescent lights became a roar, and the next thing I knew, I was waking up on a linoleum floor with a paramedic leaning over me. At the hospital, the doctor didn't mince words. "You're running on empty, Casey. If you don't slow down, you won't just lose your health, you'll lose the baby." I had to quit 2 jobs. I was down to one paycheck, food stamps, and a level of terror that sat in my throat like a stone. But then April arrived, and with it came Maya. She entered the world in a sterile delivery room with no grandmothers in the hallway and no father to cut the cord. It was just us. When the nurse asked where my family was, I lied and said they were traveling. It was easier than admitting I had been discarded like yesterday's trash. The turning point wore sensible flats and carried a clipboard. Her name was Eleanor Vance. Eleanor ran a property management firm that saw more trouble than a courtroom. I started as her receptionist when Maya was 18 months old. I was the girl who made the coffee, filed the messy tax returns, and stayed until 9 p.m. because I had nowhere else to be. Eleanor was a 68-year-old widow who didn't do pity. She watched me for 6 months before she finally called me into her office. "You have the eyes of someone who's lost everything," she said, lighting a cigarette she wasn't supposed to have. "Which means you have nothing left to fear. That makes you dangerous. Do you want to answer phones forever, or do you want to learn how to own the buildings those phones are in?" Eleanor became the mother Susan never had the courage to be. She taught me how to spot the gold in the garbage, how to look at a condemned apartment complex and see the luxury condos hidden beneath the rot. She showed me that real estate wasn't about bricks and mortar. It was about leverage, timing, and the iron will to never blink first in a negotiation. I spent my nights studying for my license by the light of a single lamp while Maya slept. I drank enough black coffee to power a small city. When I finally passed that exam, I didn't celebrate with champagne. I sat in my tiny kitchen, held that certificate to my chest, and sobbed. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't just surviving. I was building a foundation that no one, not Robert, not Brandon, could ever kick out from under me again. Success is a slow burn before it becomes a wildfire. While my father was busy erasing my face from family portraits, I was busy learning how to buy the ground he stood on. Under Eleanor's ruthless but brilliant tutelage, I stopped seeing a condemned sign as a warning. I saw it as an invitation. By the time Maya was 5, I wasn't just an agent, I was a player. I launched Summit Crest Realty from a shared office space that was smaller than my father's walk-in closet. But size didn't matter, hunger did. My specialty became the lost causes. I would find neglected brownstones in Jersey City or crumbling warehouses in Hoboken, negotiate deals that made seasoned men sweat, and flip them into high-end urban sanctuaries. I remember the day I cleared my first $1 million profit. I sat in my car, a sleek black SUV I'd paid for in cash, and looked at my bank balance. 8 years ago, I was crying over a dented grocery store cake on Maya's first birthday. Now, I was the one holding the pen. I took the champagne Eleanor gave me and saved it. I wasn't done yet. The goal wasn't just to be rich, the goal was to be undeniable. While my empire was rising, the Miller legacy was rotting. Through industry whispers, I heard the news. Robert had gambled the family construction company on a high-stakes development that tanked. He was over-leveraged, stuck with bad loans, and drowning in pride. He was selling off equipment just to keep the lights on in the mansion. The perfect Miller life was a hollow shell, held together by nothing but Susan's fading social status. Then, the opportunity of a lifetime appeared, the Thornfield estate. It was a historic 6-acre property in Ridgewood, just 3 miles from my childhood home. It was the crown jewel of the town, but it needed millions in restoration. The local developers were terrified of the risk. I wasn't. I bought it through a blind trust. I wanted my name to be a ghost until the very moment the moving trucks arrived. Moving back to Ridgewood wasn't about nostalgia, it was about positioning. I spent 18 months meticulously restoring Thornfield. I turned it into a fortress of elegance, with a backyard so vast Maya could run until she disappeared into the tree line, the very backyard I had promised her when we lived in that mildewed boarding house. The whispers started the week we moved in. Ridgewood is a small town where gossip is the primary currency. Have you heard? The girl Robert Miller threw away is back, and she just bought the most expensive estate in the zip code. I didn't seek them out. I didn't need to. I had a daughter who was thriving, a partner in David who loved the woman I had become, and a portfolio that made my father's construction empire look like a child's Lego set. I had reached a level of success where my silence was louder than any shout. I wasn't looking for a confrontation, but when you build a kingdom in your enemy's backyard, you know eventually they'll come knocking at the gate. And when they did, I made sure I was ready. The confrontation didn't happen in a boardroom or a courtroom. It happened on a Saturday morning at the foot of my driveway. I was sitting on my patio, watching Maya and David's son race across the lawn. The sound of their laughter was the only soundtrack I ever needed. Then, the intercom buzzed. "There is an elderly couple at the main gate, Ms. Miller. They claim to be your parents. They're insistent." My heart didn't skip a beat. It didn't race. Instead, a profound, icy calm settled over me. I checked the security feed. There they were. Robert looked like a shadow of the giant who had once loomed over me. His suit was ill-fitting, and his shoulders were hunched under the weight of a crumbling world. Susan stood behind him, clutching her pearls like a lifeline, her eyes darting around the estate with a mixture of awe and desperation. I made them wait. I sat there for exactly 47 minutes, 1 minute for every month I had struggled in that Newark boarding house while they lived in luxury. When I finally walked down that long, winding driveway, I didn't see the monsters of my childhood. I saw two strangers who had run out of options. Robert tried to lead with a smile, but it looked more like a grimace. "Casey," he started, his voice cracking. We we heard you were back. We always knew you had this spark in you. We're so proud." The word proud felt like a slap in the face. I didn't interrupt. I let him stumble through a rehearsed speech about family bonds and water under the bridge. Then came the truth. The bank was foreclosing on their house. His company was gone. They had nowhere to go, and they expected me, the mistake they had discarded, to be their safety net because, as he put it, blood is thicker than water. I looked at him, then at Susan, who finally found her voice to ask if she could meet her granddaughter. "Blood didn't put a roof over my head when I was 19 and starving," I said, my voice as steady as the foundation of the house behind me. "Blood didn't hold my hand when I was in labor in a room full of strangers. And blood certainly didn't write a letter saying sorry was enough to fix 9 years of abandonment." I turned to Susan. "Maya doesn't know you exist. And I've realized that keeping it that way is the greatest act of love I can show her. I'm not protecting her from you. I'm protecting her from the kind of people who only love someone when it's convenient." Robert tried one last time, his face turning a desperate shade of red. "You have millions, Casey. You owe us for the life we gave you before that night." "The debt was settled the moment you gave me 60 minutes to pack my life," I replied. "You didn't give me a life. You gave me a choice. I chose to survive. You chose to be comfortable. Now, we both have to live with those choices." I signaled the security team to close the gates. As the heavy iron bars slid shut, I watched them through the gaps. They didn't scream or fight. They just stood there, realizing that the kingdom I had built had no room for the architects of my pain. I walked back to the house, and as I stepped through the front door, the weight of the last decade finally lifted. I wasn't the girl in the parking lot anymore. I was Casey Miller, a woman who rose from the ashes, built her own fire, and finally, for the first time in my life, was truly home. My journey from a mistake to a mogul taught me one thing. Family isn't defined by the blood you share, but by the people who refuse to let go of your hand when you're at your lowest. Never let someone else's rejection define your worth. You have the power to build your own empire from the wreckage. If this story moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe to join our community of survivors. What's one lesson life has taught you about resilience? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.